Hello and welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real with Stefanie Fernandes. I'm Stefanie, your podcast host. I'm a rapid transformational therapist and founder of Your Freedom program. I help women return to themselves on their healing journey. In this podcast, we give the stage to women who overcame adversity, trauma, or any other difficult phase in their life. Be ready to get raw emotions from real people. The stories we share here are to inspire women just like you that anything is possible. And I'm so glad that today we're going to talk about a very important topic. It's very sad, but I'm here to raise awareness about this. Today we're going to talk about stillbirth. A stillbirth is the death of a baby in the womb after week 20 of the mother's pregnancy. And the reasons go often unexplained in about 1/3 of the cases. The other 2/3 may be caused by problems with the placenta or the umbilical cord, often high blood pressure or infections, just to name a few. My guest today is Tonya Montella, and Tonya's first pregnancy resulted in stillbirth after she and her husband found out that the baby didn't have a heartbeat anymore. Today, Tonya is the founder of Tonya Empowers. She helps women to gain clarity in their career, becoming confident resume writers and interviewees, so that they can land jobs that fulfill them for a lifetime. Hi, Tonya, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, Stefanie. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. And as I said in the introduction, stillbirth is often still a taboo topic because women feel that they're responsible because of something they did or didn't do. And also, I feel because we as society often lack to provide support for those families. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to help. We don't really know what to do. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here today so that you can share your story. So please tell us your story today.
Absolutely. So this goes back to 2015. My husband and I, had a pretty seamless pregnancy. All the tests that they give you, everything was completely fine. There was never any point of concern throughout. Fast forward to the end of my pregnancy, I was full term, so 40 weeks. And I'll never forget it. The night before was Christmas Eve, and it was such a unique night because it was maybe, by the way, I live in Boston, Massachusetts. It was 60 degrees around Christmas. We were outside, flip-flops, very warm. It was very, very unique night. And if I remember correctly, even that night, or maybe it was the following night, it was a full moon. So just a unique scenario to begin with. So the next morning, Christmas Day, wake up, we go on about our day. We had visited a friend, we did all these things, and nothing was really out of the ordinary until I would say later in the morning. I started feeling pains, and so I thought, oh, it's contractions. This is the start of the birth of our child. So I kind of ignored it, and I will say that I had a lot of suggestions that try and hold off as long as possible before going to the hospital, because once you go in, they don't allow you to eat or drink, and it could be hours and hours and hours excuse me, where you're really just kind of stuck there. So hold out as long as possible. So I did just that, went through the contractions, the pains throughout the entire day. And it wasn't until nighttime where I thought, okay, the pain is still happening. Nothing feels like it's really progressing. And as I think back on the day, now that I think of it, mind you, this is now in the night, I haven't felt any movement. I really didn't think about it during the day because of the pain. Really, the contractions and the pains were kind of taking my attention off of anything else. And then I started feeling a little bit feverish. So I said, okay, let me call the hospital. So I let them know what was going on, and they said, well, we can't say anything unless you come in. So we went in, and they were doing their checks. They got out the monitor to, I guess, kind of like do a sonogram, see the baby and hear the baby's heart. And I remember them putting the machine to my belly to get the heart, and there was no sound. They moved it around and said, and it was a very young woman. I believe this was her first, or one of her first nights caring for, pregnant women. And so she was very early in her career. And so I actually really felt for her that this was this is early in her career, and she's taking care of me experiencing this. But she felt a little confused that she couldn't find the heartbeat. Of course, the baby's full term, so it should have been right away and very strong. So she starts to ask me, where do you normally hear the heartbeat? She's looking for guidance from me to tell her, oh, put it on this place on my stomach. And I thought, what a question. The baby is full term at this point. You should be able to hear it very easily. So I forget what I said to her, but in any case, she's still searching for the heartbeat. Nothing, nothing, nothing. So they bring someone else in. They start to take pictures. You can tell they're just pressing a button on the computer where you hear beeps, and they're not really saying much. And so finally they let us know, unfortunately, we can't find the baby's heartbeat. And so they kind of explained to me, what the process was from there. Like, you do still have to have the baby. So we need to, give you Pitocin to kind of start that process and, get you to actually give birth to the baby. So I thought, oh, wow, now I need to sit here for hours with this child inside of me and process that. And, I really had to kind of go into a different mindset so that didn't really take over, laying in the hospital bed with a child that was no longer alive inside of you, and trying to navigate the next thing they need to inject me with to proceed with with delivering the baby. Very, very unique, difficult experience, but I was glad to be able to, I don't know how I did it, switch my mindset and kind of go into fight mode, I guess, if you're comparing it to fight mode, where I said, okay, this is happening. I can't change this. And so I just need to deal with it.
But did you realize what they said to you in that moment? That
I did. Good question. I did. And the interesting thing was, and I can't explain it, and maybe it is just my mind taking over to try and get myself through it. But I told the young woman, I said, forgive me for not having the emotion that you would anticipate me having. I'm a little is an understatement, taken aback by what's happening right now. And so, I'm not, I guess I was really in shock. So I didn't cry in that moment. Really, I didn't cry until after the baby was born and we were like going home. That's when the emotion kind of set in. So yeah, I didn't have that emotion straight away. I kind of had a straight face and kind of just started like, okay, this is real. We got to get through it. And that's kind of how it showed up for me in the moment.
so they induced you still like a few hours after you arrived. What happened then?
Yeah, so they started the induction process. They also gave me my plan going in. You always have a plan. Things don't always go as planned, as we know. My plan was to have a natural birth, but with the emotional pain and the physical pain, I thought to myself, why add that on when I'm going to have nothing to show for it at the end of it? So I'll take the epidural, have at least one less form of pain going on. So they gave me the epidural. What ended up happening was, I don't know if it's because I jolted a little bit when they put it in my back or what, but it didn't take, and took some time to notice that. I'm pressing the button to eject more of the medication, and I still was feeling everything. So going through that, and then luckily I had a nurse that really was advocating for me, because I couldn't really speak for myself. I was dealing with the pain, and she was saying, she really had to say it a lot to really fight for me, to say, this woman is feeling everything, and never mind the fact that her child is not alive. So we need to give her a second epidural, which I actually didn't think was a possibility, but I was thankful that it was. So had it not been for her advocating for me, I probably wouldn't have got the second epidural and would have felt every single thing, which would have just completely added to the trauma of the situation. But that was the process.
Mm. And what happened then?
So then once, I was dilated enough to actually give birth, my doctor came in, and it's interesting. I mean, personally, our choice, I think because we didn't know how he would look, and I don't think we were really ready for that. We chose to have kind of I don't remember what the material was, but basically a divider up so that we wouldn't see him when he came out. So, we never.
It's okay.
Never got to see him.
Yeah.
Which later on, actually, I did get to look at pictures, because what the hospital that we went to did was they give you a memory box.
Yeah.
So it's a piece of it's a lock of his hair, the handprint, the footprint, a picture of him, and then like a copy of like his weight and his size and things like that. So there was a point in time where I felt that I was ready to open that box. So I did actually get to see him through a picture, but in the moment, we did not see or hold him. My husband's mother came in from Maine. She drove down and she wanted to hold him. So, they took her into a separate room. She held him, had her moment with him. And then that was pretty much it.
What was his name?
Interestingly enough, we named him Isaiah. And I say it's interesting because once we became pregnant with our second son, we still yearned to kind of have him. So we named our son now is named Isaiah. Yeah.
And then there's something very, very difficult for everyone who has a stillbirth, who goes to the hospital pregnant and comes home without the baby.
Yes.
Yeah. How was that for you, both of you?
Oh, well, so while I was still in the hospital, my husband was getting ready to go home. We have a dog, so he was gonna go home and let the dog out. And he asked if I needed anything, and I said, "Can you just put everything, all the baby stuff, put it in his nursery and close the door?
Yeah.
Because when we go home, I don't want to see it." So he had to go through that, unfortunately, alone. Right? He went home by himself and did that whole process alone. But coming back home, it was interesting because I would say, honestly, it gave me a form of PTSD, which shouldn't be surprising, but in the sense of, my husband would go in the backyard to do something, and I would say, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" And I just didn't want to be alone. I worried about him leaving. I don't know. I guess I just thought that like anybody could die at that point. So I was fearful of a lot of things like that. But after some time, of course, time heals all wounds. It got a little bit easier. We were so adamant about having that child that we had dreamed of and envisioned. When you're pregnant, you start to imagine what the child's going to look like. You come up with a name, you find out the gender, and you buy all the clothes and all the blankets that were monogrammed with his initials. So we decided to try again, and 5 months later is when we got pregnant again. Yeah.
How was that process? How was that grieving process and the realization that it's time and you're ready to try again?
Yeah. Well, the grieving process was, of course, tough. I mean, I will say what was nice was not having to go back to work right away. The company that I worked for at the time allowed me to have the 3 months of maternity leave that I normally would if I had walked away with a baby. So I did have that time to, not be distracted by work, which sometimes I think of it and maybe it would have been a nice distraction, but yeah, I think just sitting with the thoughts and emotions, bringing me and my husband closer together in terms of the fact that we were both grieving. Um, and I would say, just going back to how strongly we wanted this is what really kept us going. So not losing sight of the happiness that we felt when we first found out we were pregnant, the visions we had of like, you know, playing playing soccer or playing baseball with him. And going back to that and just remembering that by nature, my husband and I are people that whatever we want, we go for. So
yeah.
so I think that kept
really
us
your
going.
why, right? You return to your why you started this whole process. And I mean, it's incredibly difficult. I think it's the hardest in life to lose a child, no matter in which stage or age, or before birth, during birth, or afterwards. Like you feel like a piece of you left with that baby. And in order to be able to rebalance, you really have to go back to that why, like what you just beautifully described, what your vision as a family is, and that it's still possible for you to have that, maybe not with your first son, but with your second one that you have now. So it worked out.
Yes, yes. And I think the thing that helped too, honestly, to fuel our hope, and you mentioned it in the beginning when you were describing stillbirth, but knowing that there wasn't really a cause, if it had been something about my body that, I just can't sustain life inside of me, that would have probably hindered our hope. But because there was no real explanation, that kind of told me, though it's got a downside because you feel like you just want an answer. The upside was, well, there's nothing to say that the next pregnancy can't be successful. So that was helpful to keep in mind as well. But yeah, going back to the why, to, not let, I mean, as anything in life, right? Not let one, I don't want to say failure because it's not like it was anything we did, but not let one unsuccessful attempt at something, I'll say, deter you from attempting it again. And I will say the second pregnancy was very hard because, of course, I had all those questions and thoughts in mind. What if it happens again? I felt like I was never out of the woods. They say like, oh, don't share your pregnancy until after the first trimester, because then after that, you're pretty safe. um, I never had that moment. I felt like I was not safe until he was in my arms. Um, and then, a girlfriend of mine, she was kind enough to give me her heart monitor because she's she was saying, if you ever do want to check to make you feel a little bit better, you can use this.
Yeah.
And at first I was fearful, but I did find that it was helpful to be able to just reassure myself he's there. He's okay.
Yeah.
He's still alive. He's with us. So that was nice.
Yeah, it's actually a nice idea, because they're small portable devices that can be used at home.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned that you had symptoms of post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is no surprise at all. And if it helps to calm the nerves and calm the mind, because we know how connected we are as mothers to the baby. We are connected through our nervous system, through our emotions. Our whole entire system is one. And if you carry all that fear day in, day out, your baby is affected. So it's actually like a beautiful idea that your friend had to lend you that, and that
Yeah.
you had the courage to use it.
Yes. Yes. It took some time, but once I did, I enjoyed it. So it was nice to have, for sure.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask, if you had any mental health support, any counseling after the baby died or during pregnancy, and how did you manage?
Ooh, well, I always tell people I have a very bad habit of navigating my life without the help of others. I don't often, you know, seek help or try and get advice from others, which is again a very bad habit that I'm working on getting out of. So I did not have any counseling or any support system. I thought about some, joining some groups of mothers who also experienced loss, but I wasn't ready to really engulf myself in that emotion, right? Have my own emotion surface, be surrounded by other women whose emotions were surfacing. I wasn't ready for that. So the one thing I did do, I guess if I had to compare it to a support system, I actually a friend of mine introduced me to somebody that she knew who also had, it wasn't a still was it a stillbirth? In any case, when this woman's child was born, she maybe passed away, within minutes or hours after being born. So she introduced this woman to me to say, you guys have a similar experience. If you need to reach out to her. And I said, yes, by all means, I'd love to be, somebody to lend her an ear or anything like that. So she and I went out for coffee to just share our stories and, be there for one another. It didn't go much farther beyond that, but I felt good in being that for somebody else. And of course, because we both equally shared our stories, she was that for me in that moment. Um, so I guess that's the one the one thing I had in terms of some sort of support with another woman that had experienced something differently. But besides that, it really was just going through it, between me and my husband and family.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Which can be like a huge support, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yes. It's better than nothing. I know I say I don't tend to seek out support, but it was better than nothing.
Um, One thing that I realize often is that we don't know what to say when we hear of a stillbirth, of a stillborn baby. We feel, oh, I don't want to steer in the wound, but I want to help or I want to do something. But there is this block of, I don't know what to do. What would you recommend? What something nice, something helpful, whatever it may be, people could do?
Yes, that is such a great question. I would say one thing that was huge for me, especially because, you know, when you're going through that grief and that trauma, naturally you don't want to do many other things. I don't want to, you know, diagnose it as depression, but it couldn't, it shows up in those ways. And for some people, it does manifest itself in full on depression. So I would say, again, one thing that was nice for me was when friends, we had a couple of friends who made us dinner, and it was something that was easily, you could freeze it and then just, cook it, warm it up when you're ready. Something little like that, like making us dinner and something that we could just, they even put it in a bunch of different Tupperwares. So I didn't even have to separate it. It was just something that was seemingly so small, but so nice. I didn't have to think about what am I going to eat. I didn't have to get up and cook it or go buy the ingredient. Like it was just one less thing I had to think about. So something like that to uh, take off a chore, I would call it, from somebody's plate who has gone through this is really helpful. The other thing I would say, because I understand, not knowing what to say. I mean, I feel that way even when it's a a smaller thing that a friend is going through. Um, but I would just say to reach out and let them know I'm here for you in whatever way you need me to be. I think is just a nice way to phrase it, because some people like to be left alone. Some people want to talk about it. And I think allowing that person to tell you how they would like for you to support them is just providing an open door and letting them know that you're there.
Yeah, that's so helpful, because we often think it needs to be huge, but it doesn't need to be huge. And just a text on Mother's Day, a text on a due date, a text on the death anniversary, including the memory of the child in conversations.
Yeah.
These are small things we can do just to support the grieving parents.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would like I'm so grateful, Tonya, that you shared your story with us today. I'm deeply moved. I think many of my listeners are. We are, when we are mothers, we love just so deeply, and I feel with you, and I'm glad that you managed to overcome your pain and to try again. And today you have a beautiful son. You have a 5-year-old boy that you can run around the house with.
Yes.
Do you talk with him about his brother?
Not yet. My intention is to wait for it to organically happen. I've thought about it a lot, because he will say little things like, oh, if I had a brother or a sister, and in the moment it's never felt like the time to just switch gears. He's just saying something just in the moment, but it's never felt like the right time to switch gears and say, well, you actually did or do have that seems like a big left turn. So I don't know when it will happen. We will definitely have that conversation. It just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think it's the best to go with his development, with his mental capacity to understand, so that it's not a burden for him, right? Because it is a burden just because it happened. But I like how aware you are of what the information would do to him once he knows it. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your vulnerability. I just would like to give the listeners the chance to connect with you, because in the beginning of this podcast, I explained that you are a career coach, which I think is just one of the best things. Really, I had a career coach myself before I switched careers, and it's a huge step in one's life. Sometimes we don't know how to navigate that. And I would like to give you the chance to tell us in a nutshell what you do and how people can reach you.
Yes, of course. So I work with women to help them to understand or uncover what careers they want to move into next. Sometimes they may already have a sense of that, but I love working with them on that to just confirm that that is the right move for them, because I have a huge focus on fulfillment. So sometimes, people want to switch careers for different reasons, but I make sure I ask the right questions to understand making that change is of course okay, but is that really what's going to fulfill you, or will you find yourself wanting to look for another career or another employer, a couple years down the road once again? So that's really the intention and the focus on the work that I do with the women that I work with. In addition to that, it's also making sure that they build up their resume to tell the story that they want to tell, so that they can switch careers and catch the eye of recruiters and hiring managers. And then, beef up their interviewing skills so that they walk in with confidence. Sometimes when you're changing careers, you feel like, I've never done this before, and so you're not as confident presenting yourself. So I love building up their confidence so that they walk into any interview or they submit their resume and they do it with confidence, so that they ultimately can receive the job offer. And folks can reach me. My website is tonyaempowers.com. I'm also on Instagram at Tonya Empowers. Facebook is Tonya Empowers. So anyone can reach me in any of those areas and connect.
Yeah, and I love your Tonya Empowers, because it's not only what you help others with, but I can see that you empowered yourself to follow your dreams despite what has happened to you.
Yes. yes, I try and keep a focus on empowering women in their careers, but I do, of course, have a passion in empowering women just in life in general. So I try not to complicate things by leaning into both of those in the business, but absolutely, I'm passionate about both areas. So yeah.
Thanks so much. That's beautiful. Guys, if you like this episode, please go ahead and share it with anyone you think can benefit from hearing Tonya's story. We know that unfortunately many women and many families are affected by stillbirth and stillborn babies. So please go ahead and share it and reach out to Tonya if you have questions, if you'd like to connect with her. She has some great free stuff on her website too that you can download. And I'm looking forward to hear you, to host you guys next time at Raw and Real with Stefanie Fernandes. Bye now.